Hey everyone, today I'll be looking at Warframe's controller aiming issues as well as offering some requests for improvements. Getting straight into it, Warframe uses a 20% square dead zone, meaning you have to move out of this red box before you start seeing any acceleration occur. 20% is a pretty common dead zone. It's pretty much a standard for most games. However, 20% is pretty big. As you can see, I can make some pretty big circular motions without anything occurring in game. And the dead zone is a little bigger because of these corners. Square dead zones also have the side effect of restricting diagonal movement around the axes. So as you can see, I'm bobbing my stick up and down, but I'm moving perfectly left. I can point it at a very obvious angle and I'm still moving perfectly left. Same with every other side, so I'm moving perfectly right. And this is really obvious when looking up or down, because you won't see movement or horizontal movement start occurring until I pass into the green region, which indicates diagonal movement. One of the big issues with this, obviously, is it makes pretty much all diagonal movement incorrect, since while you don't lose these subtle diagonals, they're all rescaled into this green region. So if you want a subtle angle, instead of moving your stick to a position like this, you have to move it up to here. And this brings us to the first two requests for improvements. One would be a switch from a square dead zone to a circular one, so that you'd exit the dead zone at the same distance regardless of the angle. And circular dead zones don't normally have this restricted diagonal movement, so you should be able to see full diagonal movement. So if you have a subtle angle, you should be able to input a subtle angle and then get a subtle angle out. The other one would be to get dead zone options. 20% is quite large, so it can make making precise adjustments a little more difficult, and being able to reduce this to say 5%, 2%, 10%, really anything lower than default would help make aiming easier in general, but also make the cursor movement just feel more responsive in general. The next issue would be the X and Y sensitivities are different. So this is the horizontal sensitivity, and this is the vertical sensitivity. So these are pretty obviously different, and this has two real issues that come up from it. One, it's just kind of unintuitive having the horizontal and vertical sensitivities be different. You may, turn around so fast horizontally, but looking up or down, which you'll be doing a decent bit in this game, can feel pretty sluggish in comparison. But another one, an even bigger issue that this causes, is this affects the diagonal movement. So if I move at a 45-degree angle, I'd expect to move at a 45-degree angle, even with this square dead zone the way it is. But as you can see, I'm moving a lot more subtly than a 45-degree angle. And this is because having these axis sensitivities different puts more bias on the more sensitive angle, which in this case is horizontal. So my angle's more horizontal than I'd expect it to be. So this brings me to the next request, and that's separate X and Y sensitivity sliders, because some players might enjoy how it is currently, but if we're allowed to set the axis sensitivities the same, one, we can it could make it more intuitive for us that like even sensitivities, and we'd also get correct diagonal movement out of it. We wouldn't have any bias towards any more sensitive angle, since they'd be the same sensitivity. The next issue is aim smoothing. This is a little difficult to show, but aim smoothing is where your turn rate builds up over time. So while I'm pegging the stick like this, I'm not actually starting at that speed. It's starting a little slower and taking some time to build up to that speed. It's difficult to show because Warframe uses lower amounts in other games, but when you spin the stick kind of in a circle, You see it makes kind of small circles. But with the sensitivity this fast, it should actually be making quite a bit bigger circles, kind of something a little close, more akin to this. But since I'm spinning it fast enough, the smoothing doesn't have time to build up to the maximum sensitivity. And what smoothing can cause is, since your turn rate is in flux, you don't have kind of direct control over that turn rate until it caps out. So it can make aiming feel a little more sluggish and a little less predictable, since your turn rate is in flux for some amount of time. And as a request to fix this, we would just need a smoothing slider, so we can disable that and get exactly the kind of snappy movements we may want for those that don't want smoothing. And of course, those that like smoothing can just keep it as where it's at. The last thing isn't so much an issue, it's just would be a great option to have. So as we can see, the acceleration starts off respectively slow and then increases gradually until it hits the maximum. Now it steeps up pretty dramatically at the end, but it's a continuous curve, so that's great. However, the ramp in acceleration, this is pretty subjective. As you can see, quite a bit of the stick is dedicated to slow speeds, and the very edge is dedicated to fast speeds. And what I'd like to request is an option to control this, because while it's nice being able to make pixel adjustments pretty easily and still turn quite fast, what this can do is, if you want a kind of to access middle sensitivities or middle acceleration values, you have to make quite large movements with the stick, and this can be a little more difficult when you just want to make more subtle ones. So having an option to control how the acceleration curve increases would be great. We've seen a few other games such as Titanfall 2 and Overwatch offer these by allowing you to edit the degree of a power function, and that's probably the easiest way to offer it to the player, and as well as setting it up. So we would just need an option to control the degree, and this would allow us to customize how fast this increases to maximum, so we could have it anywhere from where it is right now down to a linear, where if you move 10%, you get 10% of your acceleration. You move 50%, you're moving at 50% of the speed, which 50% as the curve is right now would be closer to over here or so. But yeah, again, this isn't a problem, but this would give you a huge amount of control over the acceleration. But that about covers everything. So there's one major fix, and that's to switch from a square dead zone to a circular one, so we can get a nice circular dead zone with full diagonal movement. And the rest are options. So an option for the dead zone size, so we can lower it, so we can make precise adjustments easier and make aiming just more responsive in general. Have separate X and Y sensitivity sliders, so that we can set this to be equal or whatever in between, if you want to keep it the way it is, or set X and Y sensitivities equal, or any part in between. An aim smoothing slider, so we can remove that. And finally, an acceleration curve slider. Again, not an issue. The acceleration otherwise is pretty consistent. It's just this would be a great option to give us tons of control over our aim. That about covers everything I wanted to mention. Thanks for watching, and everyone have a good rest of your day.